Okay, welcome back to literature. Let's finish up our literature lesson. We've got um, two elements to finish. We identified our setting, which was Altdorf. They were on their way to Altdorf, and the sun was just rising. It was early in the morning, and before the sun was completely up. And we also identified our plot. The event that makes up the story is that the father was on his way to Altdorf. And why was he going? Because he wanted to see if Gessler had found out about their secret plan. Okay, so I just want to remind you before I forget, for a style of writing, I believe every one of you knows what alliteration is. It is two or more words beginning with the same consonant in the same sentence. So I'm not going to cover that in our lesson because it's easy enough for you to figure out this, from where I start reading today to the part where I end reading today, from there to there, you can look for any alliteration that you want and you write it down. Make sure you put your quotes around it, just the 2 words or 3, and then put page number that you found it on. All right, so some of you didn't do that last week. Please do that. So we're looking for a characterization, and we're going to look for a quote that tells us the character of Brother Claus. Okay, remember we read about him. He was a monk that lived in a cave. So what kind of person was he? All right. I'm going to begin reading on page 22. If you go turn to page 22, the second paragraph that says now. Now they entered. Okay, so I want you to put your finger there and I want you to follow me and I want you to read out loud with me. I'll be reading out loud and you read out loud. That way, if there's any new words that you've never seen, you can learn how to read them. All right, let's begin. Now they entered the ever narrowing valley. It was fun to sing and shout and then listen to the sounds of their voices echo evermore faintly. Tells, remember their last name is Tells. So when it says Tells, he's talking about William, the dad, and they're calling him by his last name. Tell's strong, dark legs moved along so fast that Walter could not sing much. He was so out of breath running. Then, as the trail curved, Walter pointed to a cave in the hillside where lived a monk well loved by the people of the land of Uri. He said, Father, it must be lonely for Brother Claus to live all by himself in the dark place and just pray all the time. Let me stop right there. So it introduces a new character in our story, and it's Brother Claus. Now, which sentence do you think would be the correct sentence to use to describe his character? All right. So the first time they mention him, they say Walter points to the cave. He says, a monk well loved by the people of land of Uri. Okay. Then he says, it must be lonely for Brother Claus to live by himself in that dark place and pray all the time. Now, there's 2 definitions of Brother Claus, but realize that the second one where he's saying it must be lonely for Brother Claus, he's saying that Brother Claus is lonely. Is he lonely? Okay, that's his opinion. He's not saying it is, he's just wondering. It must be lonely. So we don't know for sure if Brother Claus is lonely. He's just his opinion. So it is better to go with what is a fact. A fact is that he's a monk and he's well loved by the people of land of Uri. So he's a lovable person. So that's what we're going to write down for Brother Claus, and I'll show you what I wrote on the board. Hang just a minute. Okay, so before you write your quote, if we write a quote, then we're not going to know who we're talking about. So I always write who we're talking about. So you're going to uppercase B for brother, because brother is almost like it's not his name, but people know him by that name. So we're going to uppercase B, Brother Claus. Then you're going to put 2 dots there. It's called a colon. That means we're separating this from the quote. It doesn't go with the quote. We're just putting there to let us know, or your reader know, that who we're talking about. Then you're going to begin your clause. I'm sorry, you're going to begin your quote. You open with a quote, and the beginning of the sentence is a monk, well dash loved by the people of the land of Uri. Uri is a name of a place, so we use uppercase U. You finish with a comma, you close with a quote, a small p, not an uppercase P. P abbreviates page with a dot, a period, and we find the quote on page 22. So that is your characterization for Brother Claus. If you need more time to write that, make sure that you pause your video. I'm sorry, there's a mosquito going around here bothering me. It's already bit me on both sides. Pause it because I'm going to continue, all right? Okay, so now that we identified the element of characterization, we're going to move on to our last one, which is the leading idea. And what's a leading idea? A leading idea is a thought that leads to a principle. So William, Nathan, David, and Josias. A principle is a rule that you live by. For example, God teaches us many, many principles in his word in the Bible that we take these principles and we make them ours and we live by those rules and we are blessed. Okay, there's a consequence to how we live, and we may, if you don't adopt God's rules, you're going to make up your own rules to live by. So it's a thought. These rules will make you think, will help you to think what to do. So if I believe that, let me just give you a funny example. When I was a little girl, my dad would say, don't drink milk and then eat watermelon, just because people die. Okay. He was told as a child that if he drank milk and ate watermelon, that he would die. And so he told me that. So that was a rule that he learned, something not to do because he didn't want to die. Okay. The thought would come to his head, I'll die. So whether you purposely do it or not, you're always going to adopt rules, and it's best to adopt God's rules because you'll be blessed. So a leading idea is a rule that they're using we're identifying the thought. The thought tells us that they're living by a certain rule. They have this rule in their life that they're living by. So, and I'm going to give you a clue. The rule that we're looking for is remember at the beginning of our lesson, before we started reading our literature book, we talked about the 7 natural affections. There's 7 things that you learn to love when you accept God's love and you love God back. You learn to love God, his word. You learn to love education, nature. You learn to love liberty, and you learn to love individuality. And there's one more. I can never get all 7 of them. I'll remember in just a minute. The love of learning, love of God's word, love of God, individuality, the love of liberty, love of nature, and there's one more. I'll remember. Anyways, the clue for our leading idea is the love of individuality, the God-given individuality of others. Okay, so we're looking for something that tells us that someone accepts other people how they are. They love them anyways, even if they're different. That's what the love of individuality is. You love others aside from the fact of how they live, how they behave, what kind of person they are, because they're an individual, they're a soul, and we should love all people. All right. So we're going to pick up where we left off after Brother Claus, where it says, Claus lived all by himself in a dark place, just prays all the time. And his father says, perhaps it would be for you, son. In other words, it would be probably lonely for you, replied his father, but Claus seems happy. When any one of the mountain folk is ill or without bread, Claus comes to comfort them. When a woman loses her husband or a mother her child, Claus is there to pray with her. All men, Walter, do not like to do the same thing. Okay, some like to hunt, others to fight, and still others to till the soil. Claus is a man of God, and I am sure he's happy even if he lives alone in that dark cave. So William is teaching his son a lesson right now. His son asked a question. He says, I wonder if he's lonely. And he's telling him, no, he's not lonely because he's doing something that he really likes. Perhaps for you, it would be difficult to be alone in a cave, but for someone else, it's not because he's different and he likes different things. He's also teaching them that everyone is different. He says, he says, all men, Walter, do not like the same thing. In other words, it's okay for someone else to be different than you. We don't dislike someone just because they're not like you, okay? Some like to hunt, and he's referring to other men. Some men like to hunt, others like to fight, and still others till the soil. That means to work the soil to grow food. Claus is a man of God. So Claus chose to be a man of God, kind of like a pastor. And I'm sure he's happy even if he lives alone in the dark yonder cave. So William Tell just taught him a principle of individuality. And that's what we're going to write here on our paper. But before we go there, I'm going to finish scene 2. So next week when we get back together and and do our literature class, we'll just pick up from scene 2 rather than, and so I'll finish scene 1. It says, soon Walter saw the old roofs of Altdorf and the stone towers of Zwinguri, which was Gesser's castle. Then Tell's happy mood changed. Walter heard him mutter, that knave. In other words, it wasn't a very nice name. He was calling Gessler a name. That knave, as busy as a rat in a wheat rick. The tower grows higher each day, and soon Gessler will live there and spy upon all that we do, and put free men behind iron bars. In other words, put them in jail. So that is the end of scene 2. So I will show you what I wrote on my board so you can look at mine. Okay, so this first line up here is not a part of our quote. This is the principle that our quote is backing up. So you're going to write uppercase G, God-given individuality. That's one of our 7 natural affections. We're going to separate this from our quote with a colon, okay? Our quote begins here. And we have double quotes. Let me put that in blue so you can see it better. We have a quote because it's right out of the book, but then we also have a single quote because someone is saying this. William Tell is saying, some like to hunt, others to fight, and still others to till the soil. Claus is a man, and I am sure he is happy. I'm sorry, I forgot something. A man of God. Oh, no period. And I am sure he is happy, and even if he's alone in the dark cave yonder. Okay, so spelling group number 1, all you have to write is what's underlined in blue. You're going to write God-given individuality. Some like to hunt, others to fight, and still others to till the soil. You're going to finish spelling group number 1 with single quote, double quote. After this quote, spelling group number 1, you're going to write page 22. You're going to write this. Everyone else, spelling group 2 and 3, you're going to write the whole thing for. This is for our leading idea. It's the very last one on the bottom of your page, the very last one in blue, leading idea. Okay? Let me see, did I? Is a man of God. I probably should put this in black. A man of God, and I am sure. So spelling group 1, you're going to end right here. It's a little bit shorter for you. So that is the end of scene 2. I'm sorry, chapter 2, scene 1. Next week we'll do scene 2, and go ahead and pause your video. I'm going to turn off my recording now. All right? We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.